Happy, my brother. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, Kyle, my brother. It's good to
Thanks for
see you.
taking thanks for taking some time to speak with me this afternoon. I'm very excited to dig into your story. It's one that I have become familiar with more recently, and I think there's still a lot more for me to learn about it. So I don't know. I guess I've been kind of starting these episodes with music as an entry point. So if you want to start, I don't know, maybe at the earliest point that you can recall really starting to identify with music and formulating an identity around music, like maybe some of the earlier bands that kind of grabbed you. Maybe we could start there.
Yeah, well, that goes way back to elementary school.
Go
Uh,
all the way.
well, and it's personal too. It's also really is a part of like the development of my personality, which is that my dad was quite absent from the early part of my life, and
Mm,
my sister is a fair bit older. She's like 8 years older, and so when I was about 10 years old, and that would have been like 1987, she started dating this heavy metal guy. And he was like, I thought he was the coolest guy. I wanted to be him,
right.
basically. So, in a way, this like role model father figure type, even though he was not a parent at all to me, was, whatever, a 16-year-old boy,
Yeah.
or something like that, 17. But I just thought he was the coolest. And he was a raging guitar player, and he loved hair metal, or like heavy
Okay.
metal and hair metal. So like he introduced me to, like, I was like listening to, pop songs on the radio.
Right.
I liked Brian Adams, who's
Yeah.
also Hoover, and and then he was into like Dio and Rat and Dokken. And so then like I was like, okay, this is the coolest music there is.
Right.
And then I got into it. I wanted to play music. And shortly after that, um, I became interested in punk rock. Um, because actually, mostly because like Metallica and Guns N' Roses had members who were into like the Misfits or the Ramones or whatever. Like, and I was like, oh, there's this other music that's like less known. I've always been drawn to more esoteric, more marginal places.
Right.
And so then, and when I got my first Ramones album, I was like, oh, here's music I can actually play.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
listening to these other bands, I was like 1,000 miles from being able to play their music, but I could play Ramones songs. And I started trying to write songs like that, like right away. And then from there, the world opens up into like punk rock, hardcore, and on we go.
Yeah, it's funny how these a lot of these stories are kind of similar. Like mine, I can relate. My kind of entry into music was through a more simple approach as well, with bands like Nirvana. You know what I mean? Like playing these one note kind of riffs and power chords, and that's kind of where I started too. Was just like, oh, like stuff that I listened to leading up to that was probably a little out of reach, but once I found the simplicity in the music that I was experiencing and realized I could play those riffs, they're actually quite simple to figure out. That was when I started to get the confidence that I could also start creating. And from that point, I all I wanted to do was start playing with other people and writing songs of my own. And they all started out very simple as well.
Bass? Were you playing bass right away?
No, no, I was playing guitar first. Like my mom handed me down her Gibson acoustic guitar, and so that was kind of the first. That and my grandfather's 12-string guitar I inherited as well. And at that point, it was just like I was just making noises. I had no idea what I was doing. And but playing "Come as You Are" on really any sort of guitar is the same experience, right? It's very easy
Yeah.
to do. And once you play, even if it's somebody else's song, once you have the experience of playing it with your own hands, you're just like, holy shit. It seems like something that's so unachievable, when you hear it on the radio. And so, yeah, once you do that with a couple songs, another one I think was Iron Man
Oh
by
yeah.
Ozzy. Just like the quintessential riffs, memorable single note riffs is really
Yeah.
where it started for me too. And then yeah, that leads down the same path. Like all of these um, iconic bands are great, and you come across them through the mainstream, but then you start to ask questions about kind of where they came from. And I don't know, I guess I started thinking about it a little more differently as I moved through it, started paying more attention to the messaging, which eventually led me into punk rock and hardcore. It's like, oh, they're saying something a little bit more specific and something more relatable. And yeah, that's kind of where I ended up as well.
Yeah, I was also really attracted to the cultural critique that emerged as I went down that punk rock path and got into Dead Kennedys, and then
Yeah,
shortly Propagandy, and and I was like, okay, yeah, I could tell there's something's not right.
right.
you know,
Yeah, they're talking about these things very specifically, right?
yeah.
It's not as broad as like Nirvana talking about like how the world's fucked up and how I hate myself, and you know what I mean? Like
Or
it's
even
more
indescribable, like, it smells like Teen Spirit to my ears was like, this is just like free association. I don't, maybe it has more meaning than that, but at the time, I'm
right.
like, oh, this is a kind of a heavy band in the mainstream. They're basically free associating their lyrics.
Yeah, exactly. And like for me, a big thing, a big entry point into like the ideology of hardcore was through straight edge. And
Mm,
because I experimented. I didn't do heavy drugs necessarily or hard drugs in high school, but I did my fair share, and I knew that that wasn't the path that I wanted to continue down. And so I kind of stumbled into this thing called straight edge, which offered another way. You know what I mean? And it seemed pretty cool, and it was more
mm,
positive. It had like a less destructive kind of approach while
mm.
keeping the music part uh, involved. And so yeah, straight edge kind of brought me straight edge and hardcore kind of came hand in hand with me, and then that led to everything that would come afterwards. Did you do a stint of straight edge as well? Was that
Oh
ever
yeah.
part of your? Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. Straight edge was sort of in my periphery. Like I knew of it, but I wasn't really interested in the bands yet. But I actually had a friend die a drug-related death when I was 18.
really.
Uh, yeah, like the first thing I heard was that he had overdosed, and then the story was sort of corrected to he drowned in the bathtub. But
Hmm.
I'm like, this is like, he was a bit older than me. He was like 20. And I'm like, how do you drown in the bathtub unless it's drug related?
Right.
And he was actually the bass player in one of my first bands. And it was wild to be like that young and to lose a peer.
Yeah.
Uh, and at that moment, I was like, okay, I don't want anything to do with the world of drugs and alcohol. I drank before that, kind of like a high school kid would drink. I was never too into drugs. I'd smoked weed a handful of times, but didn't like it.
Yeah.
And and then I drifted into straight edge kind of gave me like a bit of an identity and a symbology and some kind of guidance to go, or for the feeling of like community almost, to
Right.
kind of help me in a way with this like feeling that I didn't want to be like the people around me. Like, I mean, most people were drinking or experimenting with drugs when I was 18. And
Yeah.
so that there was some way to do it and still be cool. That was
Right.
what straight edge was for me at that point.
Yeah.
And then I stayed actually drug and alcohol free from 18 till like into my 30s.
Okay.
But eventually this kind of the straight edge, like the fashion of it, the t-shirt and the like putting X's on my hands, that was pretty short lived. That was kind of
Yeah.
a bit of a younger part, but I definitely like enjoyed a totally sober young adulthood. Yeah, for like 16 years, um, with or without the identity of
Right.
straight edge.
That's a good stretch. I made it about 9, I think, 9 or 10.
What changed for you?
I think I lost my connection to the ideology of straight edge as I got older. Um, I think just I don't know. It's hard to really say. I just didn't really connect with it the same way. I wasn't into the music that was associated with it as much anymore at that point, and just kind of how some of that. And this was only probably a small percentage of the people, but I just had come across a lot of people that um, I didn't I didn't think they kind of carried it well. You know what I mean? And they used
Oh,
it as
definitely.
an excuse to be violent and to be judgmental towards others in maybe a way that I identified with early on when I was like ramped up about it and it was new to me and I thought it was like you know the thing that everybody had to do. But as I got older, I kind of lost that connection to it, and I was spending a lot of time on the road around people that were drinking and smoking pot, and I kind of just got the pendulum kind of swung the other direction, and I was like, all right, this served me for 9 years, and I'm glad that I did it. But I think I'm grown up enough now where I can experience the other direction in moderation, and it won't be as destructive. And
Mm,
that I would say that was true to a degree, but I definitely went harder than I anticipated. Swung a
mm,
little harder the other direction and got
mm,
kind of heavy into the drinking after that. And
mhm.
but it kind of balanced itself out. And it's funny
Yeah.
now. I haven't had a drink in over a year, and I haven't even smoked pot in probably about 9 months. And so
Mm.
it's funny how things kind of come back full circle in a way.
Yeah, that is interesting. For me, I think that like a lot of times I see this with a lot of people, like when you're younger, you define you're understanding the world in this way that feels like it's imposing itself on you. And so there's this urge to identify yourself by what you're not. It's
Right.
like it's actually a kind of a negative identity. So you
Mm-hmm.
have people who are like anti-racist, anti-capitalist, straight edge, whatever. It's like vegan even. It's all like, here's what I don't do. Here's the
Yeah.
parts of the world that I'm not or that I'm opposed to. And I think that there is an opportunity actually to grow into, I would say to mature into a self-expression that is not a reaction to something.
Yeah.
Because actually, when you are like opposing something, you're also upholding the thing that you are opposing by
Right.
your it's still running the show.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like if you're straight edge, drug use is still manufacturing your identity.
Right.
So it's not until like you can move beyond this kind of dualism or this binary of there's this and there's this. And actually for me, like I also grew up Christian until I was 10 years old and had my apostasy and was like, it was a short trip into like being quite a hardcore atheist.
Right.
But even then I found that like being straight edge and being vegan in hindsight was allowed me to take basically a religious structure and just fill it with new content.
Right.
So it was no
But pretty
longer,
much the
but it's the
same
same structure,
approach.
the same
Right.
energy. Whereas like
Yeah.
I'm right, I'm part of the good guys. The people who disagree with me are wrong. And the
Yep.
whole world should approach life in this way that I have found according to this group
Yep.
or this ideology. And but it's, to me, that's immature. And to actually adhering to any ideology is
Yep.
ultimately a mistake. I'm,
Right. It's a
I'm
deep.
about to identify myself now as anti-ideology. I'm upholding ideology. My identity depends on ideology because I'm anti-ideology. But really, I just think anything that says like, "Hey, I'm part of the good group," and implying everyone else is part of the bad group is silly.
Right. No, I agree, and I think there's a lot of wisdom in those words. You know what I mean? You kind of defeat the purpose of finding the truth if all you're doing is adapting somebody else's truth your whole life, adapting to somebody else's truth your whole life. It prevents you from being who you are, who you're meant to be, right? In a lot of ways.
Yeah, but it's interesting because actually, if you're trying to escape from anything, that thing is still running the show. So
It's true.
so you end up in this cycle, this paradoxical cycle of like, oh, I'm not going, like, my culture's not going to define me at all. But of course, in some way, it is your journey. Your
Right.
persona is constructed according to, even that we're speaking English, it
Yeah.
already conditions something about the way that we think. So somehow trying to hold both an authentic, original self-expression that is nevertheless mediated by language and symbology. There's no escaping it really unless you're sitting in meditation, in a state of total mental silence.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's kind of a mind fuck in a lot of ways. But before we get too far down that path, let's rewind for a second.
Yeah, yeah.
I wanted to touch on some of the bands that through your musical journey, some of the bands that you started playing with that maybe had like early on had a big impact on you. I know of one of them, but you mentioned a couple more. What was the first band that you started playing that was of note that kind of performed live and maybe did some touring or whatnot?
Well, the when I was 18, again, that's such a pivotal year, I joined GOB, the
Okay,
Canadian GOB. I know there have been some other GOBs. And in Canada, GOB is well known and loved and
right.
was just kind of ascendant at that time. And so that was huge for me. I was also playing in a band called Manor Farm, which actually like has a little bit still of a cult following.
Oh yeah.
I have a friend who insists that that is the thing that people would most identify. I don't think so. And so, but anyway, in my teens, those were kind of like the two bands that did something.
Right. And so in Gob, um, somebody from another member from that band is the one that drowned in the bathtub, or that just
No,
happened while you were in that
this
band.
this was an earlier band. So the guy who drowned in the bathtub was not in GOB. He was in a band that I had done earlier that
I got you.
wasn't working anymore.
Okay.
Um, which I'm not even sure. I think we were called Scuffle.
Okay.
Yes, have we had a couple of tapes. That was like kind of the first. Even that, there was even an earlier band than that actually that never performed but did write
Right.
and record songs. But that was the very first band that we wrote our songs. We did shows. We had a couple of cassettes.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
And then how far did you play? How long did you play with Gob before taking the next step?
just 1 year.
Just 1 year.
So
Okay.
yeah, just 1 year. So and so I was still doing Manor Farm too, and there's kind of a conflict between the scheduling of the two bands, and I ended up not playing in either. Like they
Okay.
both ended for me. Um, and that's when I started going to college, and I was kind of like, oh, maybe I won't even play music anymore.
Okay.
But
So did you take a break then after that and focus on school?
I took about a year off of like pursuing like recording and performing, although I would still play at home. I play guitar.
Okay.
Um, and then, yeah, I'm not even sure exactly the next. I think the next thing was that I maybe joined By a Thread,
Hmm.
which was a band composed of guys from Strain, a Vancouver hardcore band called Strain.
Okay.
This was in the in the early kind of emo days.
Yeah.
They put out a really awesome album that I loved on Revelation Records. And then we're in need of a bass player, and I joined them, toured with them for a bit, never recorded anything. And then, and I was trying to get like a pop punk band off the ground after that, but just didn't have the right personnel and ended up then trying a solo project, which is
Yeah.
just me and my guitar, which I loved. I mean, I was not very good. I needed a band. I could not sing. I could not really play guitar well enough. The
Yeah.
songwriting, serviceable, it's definitely heartfelt,
Right.
um, and charming to some people for sure. But I really cherish the the months that I was just on tour by myself, just hop in the
Yeah.
car with my guitar and just go. So much different than being with a band in a van and all the equipment
Right.
uh, and I loved my solo touring days. Yeah.
What was that project called?
It was called Happy Kreter, Kreter. My was
Okay.
my
Right.
legal name, and I put out two records. The first one pretty novice sounding, but still not without its charms. Couple good
Right.
songs. The next album was a little better,
Yeah.
but this goes back to, I think, like my role model when I was 10 being like this teenage musician. I don't think I'm really very talented musically, but I was just had this like feverish desire to emulate this older kid who was.
Yeah. Yeah.
And but I mean, it's just the time of my life, being involved in the music scene. And it's also made me it gave me such an appreciation for music, actually, like getting to play with great musicians and learn more about music than I ever would have if I hadn't been
Yeah.
trying to make music.
Yeah. For sure. And so, like from that point, were you still doing university, like, and doing a little bit of touring, or did you stop school and kind of pivot
Yeah,
back and forth?
yeah, I was back and forth. So I was like booking my own tours, and then I'd be on tour, and I'd come back, and if I had a semester to spare, I'd do a few classes, and
Yeah.
I kind of did the first 2 years of my undergrad over the course of maybe like 7 or 8 actual calendar years,
Yeah.
in between, yeah, playing music and just pursuing life stuff. I was fortunate enough to be an English tutor, so that I kind of had my own business. At that time, I could leave and go on tour when I wanted. And
Okay.
then like, trying to couple, I'm in these like monogamous relationships again and again and again, and trying to find my life partner. And that is a whole like emotional and psychological roller coaster for me in my 20s. So, just that good stuff of trying to like experience a meaningful existence somehow,
Right. Did you find yourself kind of on a path during this process then, like kind of where you started to focus more on a direction when it came to schooling? And I mean, I know you eventually landed in religious studies, right? Was that kind of always part of the plan, or is that something that came later?
That was totally unforeseen. So I
Okay.
mean, I still at that point in my 20s was absolutely dismissive of religion or spirituality. If you
Yeah.
had asked, I would have said a human being is not something with a spiritual capacity. Like the spirit is some fantasy. I was
Right.
like a hardcore materialist, atheist, and so no, I was not. I could never have foreseen where my life was headed, but I was also dealing with quite severe mental health problems,
Hmm.
which start like when really I can really see that that's like when I'm 10 years old that I'm just like start having like mysterious illnesses that cause me to miss school, digestive problems that put me in hospital, that like, and then in my early teens I'm having severe mental health episodes that are like super alarming to my mom. And so I'm also navigating like a severe depression
Right.
um, through my 20s, that ultimately I'm hospitalized after a suicidal
Hmm.
gesture when I'm like 28, and I just wake up in the psych ward from a coma,
Oh wow.
strapped wrists and ankles to a bed. And
Right.
so that's a huge turning point for me. You know, spiritually, psychologically, just in terms of where my life is headed.
Did
Um,
you have
so
some sort of like specific experience through that kind of process of it sounds kind of like almost like a near death experience in a sense if you're in a
yeah,
coma. Like was there
yep.
something that you experienced while in that state?
So not that I recall consciously. Um, it's a bit, the event is dark,
Yeah.
totally dark for me. Like all I remember is going to bed the night before. In the morning, I hung myself. I don't know why. I don't have any recollection of it. I
Hmm.
just went to bed the night before and woke up like a couple days later in the hospital.
Okay.
So, but I had, I definitely was in like a pitched battle for survival internally for over a decade at that point,
Yeah.
that for one reason or the other culminated in this moment that for me was kind of like rock bottom.
Right.
And so, but then that's the beginning of me starting to explore like what's going on with me with some help. So then I started getting psychotherapy,
Hmm.
which was like super eye opening for me. And that
Right.
was the beginning of this exploration of like personal growth and like healing. I don't even know about the word healing, but it gets associated with the spiritual path quite a
Right.
lot. And so, but I started really being interested in my personal growth.
Yeah.
Uh, and so I did one more solo tour at that point, and then I was like, it was my solo tours had been getting better and better, and then I was
Hmm.
hospitalized, and I did this tour, and it wasn't that good, and I was like, okay, I'm not, I need to figure out another way of life.
Right.
Um,
You
and
took the
then
hint that was being given to you.
Yes, that's a very good way of saying it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then when I was 30 years old, I became a father.
Okay.
So uh so I was dating a woman. She became pregnant. It was unplanned. She wanted to have this child and pursue like a life together. And so but having my son was like at that moment was the most like spiritual experience of my life,
Right.
would say. So and the first time, like, just like touching this newborn, my son, who's now 18 years old and he's headed off to
Fucking
university,
wild. Yeah.
but like it was a paradigm. It was paradigmatic shock is the
Yeah.
word.
Right.
All of a sudden, the universe I'd been living in became technicolor, whereas it had previously been black and white. Only I
Right.
didn't know. That was just my color palette. I thought it
Yeah.
was in color, but boom, something changed. And I realized that, like, okay, my whole existence now is like devoted to raising this child, like
Yeah.
guiding this journey of consciousness. And that it was so profound and so undeniable that there was also kind of no question that I would have to become well, as wise and as well as I could become,
Yeah.
because this mission now was of utmost importance.
So that
So
just kind of forced your hand in a way. And probably, I mean,
yeah,
I can't relate. I don't have children, so I don't know what that feels like, but um I can sense the gravity of it and how that can just be so paradigm shifting, and probably very unexpected until you find yourself in that position, right? And so, yeah, I mean, that sounds like a crazy kind of culmination of events that would have brought you to that point in life. And so, from that point, did you kind of dig deeper into academia and put all your focus there? I guess you kind of walked away from music largely as far as
yeah,
like performing, but then that's where it
yeah.
kind of
I was drifting from like pursuing music as like my principal vocation.
yeah,
But this made it clear, like I was not going to be going on tour I was not going to be away from my son
yeah,
for much time at all, you know?
right,
So, but I knew that I still wanted to be creative. I wanted to pursue something creative. And so I had finished the first 2 years of my undergrad without declaring a major, and through like a community college. And so after my son was born, I applied to a university, the University of British Columbia, which has a like quite a renowned writing program, creative writing department, and people come from all over the place to go to school there. And so I just put together a portfolio. I didn't have writing at the time. I just like started writing to create a
right,
portfolio I would send to say, hey, let me into this program. And I
yeah,
got in. And then I finished I ultimately graduated with a Bachelor of Fine Arts in creative writing.
okay,
And I thought that I would somehow pursue writing as my vocation. And I've always kind of never lost sight of the idea that how I wanted to make a living was doing something that I loved and that was fulfilling.
okay,
Uh, so that was that part of the academic journey.
right. And that's what felt like it was calling you at that time, as a way to kind of uh, merge that creativity with an education, and then try and create something from there as a result. And then what kind of shifted along that process that got you more interested in honing in on the religious stuff and the more spiritually oriented subject
Yeah,
content?
that is still a ways to come in my story, actually.
Oh well,
So
don't let me
I
jump ahead then. Yeah,
no,
just let's.
no, that's this very natural next chapter is that I just actually before I graduated, I got a job at a magazine. Remember those
Okay.
things? They were a
Yeah,
form of
yeah, yeah.
they,
This sounds vaguely familiar.
yeah. So great time to get into the publishing industry just as it's collapsing, right? But
Right.
uh, I did get a job at a magazine. Um, which was like basically an industry magazine for the hydroponics industry.
Okay.
So it was really geared towards people growing cannabis.
Mm.
But I didn't know anything about that, but I was just kind of like the lifestyle, like contributing editor. I would help these weed growers write their articles, and then it was kind of a lifestyle magazine. So I would write about music and travel and whatever. And
Yeah.
so that was a very cool job. And it lasted for like a couple, 2 or 3 years, maybe, before, the owners were like, okay, this is not working. And,
Yeah.
and then, uh, and then I needed a new job. But actually that was right at the same time that Between Earth and Sky, which is a hardcore band that I founded, that kind of took years of to put together,
Yeah.
with Greg Bennick from Trial, and Sean Landy from Strain, and Alexi Rodriguez from 3 Inches
A
of
bunch
Blood.
of bands.
And so we had put out an EP, and we went on tour. In 2013, we went to Europe, and that was at the same time as I had just lost my job. Actually, I think it was after the tour that I was told, like, that we're folding the magazine.
Yeah.
Um, and so and so yeah, so that ended up being the last tour I ever did, for music. Uh and then I was between jobs, and but I was still had the urge to write. So I um I I thought to myself, I need either a job where I'm like alone, maybe like driving a truck or something, where, because 80% of writing is like going for a walk,
Right.
and then before
Yeah,
you're
for
like,
sure.
and eh, either that, or I wanted to be of service. My mental health was still pretty poor. My
Mhm.
baseline still depressed, although I had a lot to live for as a
Right.
father. So, but I was still resolving this like lifelong feeling of like despair, really.
Yeah, it's not something that just evaporates overnight, right? You
Yeah.
you have your breakthroughs only to go back to realize that there's still, remnants left over, and layers upon layers of this shit to work through over time.
Yeah. That you sound like that's you speaking from experience.
Yeah, 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 I think so. I mean, mine is a more recent experience, but and pushing through the kind of most difficult points was significant, but it just revealed that there is much more to it than just getting over the hump. You know what I mean? Like you reach a point of breakthrough and clarity, and when you're when you get through that, you realize that that's important, but it never stops. That's really just the beginning of the rest of your life. And it's great. It's a great realization to have, you know what I mean? Because it's much harder to get from that place of darkness to the light. And so once I was in the light on the other side of it, more challenges came, but I'm much more well equipped to face them now, and I look forward to it. And growth has now become fun and something that I want to do this from this point, moving forward. So yeah, I mean, our stories are similar in that way. Obviously, very different in how we got to those places, but I can definitely relate.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think I think everyone can in their own way, like there's no one gets through life without some pain, without an experience of despair, without feeling abandoned, without feeling betrayed, without
Right.
wondering, what am I doing here? And is it worth it? I think, yeah.
Yeah, it often takes that experience to start to finally understand what this is all about. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
the lessons are learned in the pain. You know what I mean? That's where the good stuff comes from. But it certainly doesn't feel that way when you're immersed in it and it's all you see around you. You know what I mean?
Mm. Mhm. Well, and that's a lot of what like hardcore and punk rock is, a lot of disaffected people, right?
Right.
And to
Yeah.
say like where like what is gone, like the mainstream prescription doesn't apply to me.
Right.
So and included in there is a lot of anger for sure, but also, you know, how many bands and people in the scene have you met who are just like, they're despairing, they're cynical, they're, you know, it's like it's a reaction to really a corrupt prescription. um
Right.
so
And
I'm not.
it's corrupt for everybody, you know what I mean? But a lot of people don't. They don't make it to that point of questioning it. Like you, I don't know, hardcore kind of um, was something that allowed me a glimpse into what was wrong, and that I didn't have to necessarily accept all of that stuff that I had been accepting up to that point. And so, yeah, I don't know. I
And
guess,
that you're not alone, and that you're not alone
right.
in your
Yeah, and that's a
in your
big part.
recognition, right? That's huge. The
Yeah.
community is maybe the most attractive thing.
And something that it's been a part of my life ever since. You know what I mean? And I'm sure you can relate. Like some of those people that I met at that pivotal point are still some of my best friends today, 25, 30 years later. And so there's something there, you know what I mean? There's something special that lives in those moments. And I think the proof is kind of the the quality of relationship that comes through. And you know, like the next time I see you is gonna be at Ryan Morgan's wedding, which I found out about. And I mean, that's a perfect example of somebody that I met when I was 18, 19 years old, and we just became instant best friends, and that's never changed. And so I have hardcore and straight edge and all that stuff to thank for it. You know what I mean? Like just those things that come across your path that you don't necessarily see coming, but when they do, you're like, oh, that's important to pay attention to, and it leads to so many things.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Some of the most like vibrant and interesting and intelligent and passionate people I've ever met have
Right.
been from the punk and hardcore scenes, you know. So
Well,
um
from the point of your writing endeavors, was that ultimately then what led you into more of an academic approach towards the religious studies, or there's still more? Is there still
there's
more
still
gap to fill in? Well, let's
there's
let's
a
pick
still
up where we
another.
left off.
But yeah, okay. Um so anyway, so I was like, okay, I need a job where either I'm working alone so I can be in my creative mind and, you know, writing in some sense, or I'd like to be of service because my mental health was still poor. And one of the prescriptions for solving your mental health is to be of service,
Right.
which turns out to be really great, actually. Like there's something about depression and anxiety that is even a bit narcissistic. It's a bit, it's like a deep concern with yourself,
Right.
and the, you know, to turn your focus outward and to pour your energy out can be a help to that kind of
Yeah.
obsessive my life is meaningless or whatever it is you're dealing with.
Right.
uh, so in Vancouver, where I live, there's a nonprofit organization that has employed a ton of the Vancouver music scene since it got going in the 90s.
Yeah.
Vancouver is um, infamous for its downtown east side. There's a ton of homelessness, there's a ton of mental illness, and there's a ton of drug use, and it's sort of like de facto decriminalized. It's a very tolerated, open distribution and use of drugs on the streets. So there's also a whole lot of need for people to be of service in that neighborhood. Um, and I had friends who had been working at this organization for a long time. And it was actually my dear friend Stephen Fairweather, who's the current bass player for Gob and also was in By a Thread,
Okay.
who recommended me. He had worked at a safe injection site there, North America's first sanctioned supervised injection site.
Okay.
And I was ultimately hired by another friend of mine, um, Matt from the Black Halos, which is this
Hmm.
very cool punk rock band or rock, I don't know, rock and roll band. So yeah, so the music scene just keeps on giving, and then I
Right.
started. Oh, I started serving. I started in housing and home support for like really severely mentally ill, hardcore drug users. And it was a total, another paradigm shift, really, to have concerned myself with people whose lives were far worse than mine had ever been, um, but who were nevertheless like really vibrant and interesting in their own right. And I realized working there that my mental health had been so poor, but I'd had good support from family and friends over the years. And that was really the difference between me and this very dire condition
Right.
of life was that I had solid social connections.
Yeah.
And so after 4 years working in that organization, I had gotten to know the chaplain who did the memorial services when people housed by the organization or participated with the organization died, and he did these like regular visits to the buildings to just like meet people, talk to people, pray with people, whatever, and had these other community programs that he ran, and I got to know him, and he was an older guy, and then when he uh, was moving on from his position, he asked if I would like to succeed him as chaplain. But I wasn't religious.
Right.
I mean, I'm not even sure. I was barely spiritual. I had actually started, I had been meditating by that point, and that
Okay.
had gotten me interested in Buddhism and
Yeah.
Buddhist philosophy. I had started using psychedelics, which actually produced these mystical type experiences that were super eye-opening paradigm shifts again,
Hmm.
where I was having experiences I could never have imagined that were connective in like a transcendent way.
Sure.
So I was now accelerated down this interest in spiritual things, and which had put me in conversation with this chaplain in ways that he was like, "Hey, do you want to do this? Do you want to be a spiritual caregiver?" But I was like, "Well, what about? I'm not religious. Like, what are you talking about?" and
Yeah.
and he is like, "Well, you're good with people, and that's all it is." And he really instilled in me that like well, he instilled in me a kind of a motto, which is he would always say, the essence of the creator is relationship. And that became foundational to my understanding, and a shift, really a big shift from this kind of materialist idea that I am an object, or that what life is like subject and object, but even every subject is sort of a pseudo subject because it's all just material objects in space,
Right. Yeah.
and and that you're therefore some kind of separate thing. And I started to understand that relationship is the essence of all things, which is a
Hmm.
Buddhist teaching and a Christian teaching and a spiritual, an indigenous teaching.
Right.
Uh,
A through
and
line
that,
through all of it.
yeah. And so that really started, that shifted for me. So and I'm still not into the academic part of my religious studies.
Oh, we're getting there. This is all important context.
Yeah. Um, so anyway, fast forward to like, I've been doing this frontlines work for 8 years, and I've been in emergency after emergency. I've dealt with all types of violence and death and resuscitating people who are on the verge of death or overdosing. And finally, like, my nervous system has been in a state of alarm so regularly that my nervous system just starts to malfunction, and I'm in a kind of a perpetual state of alarm. Or, I was having what might be called panic attacks by
Hmm.
most people, except that I was familiar enough with an emergency response in my body, and alert or aware enough of that. There's like, I'd go into a kind of a panic mode, but I'm like, there's no emergency.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, my nervous system is shot. and
Right.
and and I applied for a medical leave, and it was granted. And I saw, a friend of mine showed me this Instagram post that the University of Ottawa was launching a psychedelics and spirituality master's program. And
Mm.
I was like, well, that's me. That's for me. And I applied, and I was admitted, and I spent 3 years doing a master's degree, and got right up to like my thesis. There's an outline for my thesis. I probably have like 2 days of work to do to complete my master's, but I was called away. The spirit called me away.
Yeah, I mean, I remember when you told me that, how, how impressed I was, honestly, because, like, obviously you had worked up to that point over the course of many years, even before you kind of set your focus on it. Felt like you probably were kind of led in a direction, and then here you are standing at the doorstep of completing that part of the process, and something else pulls you away. I mean, I don't get sick of these type of stories. You know what I mean? Where people, they have this fortitude. You know what I mean? This ability to just do what is right in the moment, regardless of anything that came before. And some of these stories that I've heard are, man, just, they just blow my mind. You know what I mean? I can't really grasp it because I can't relate to it in the same way, but it never ceases to amaze me. And yours is one of those stories. And um, I don't know. I mean, I guess, like, what, if you could point to something that kind of helped you make that decision, what was it? I mean, I guess, what was the ultimate calling that pulled you away from the path that you were on, and that kind of leads you to where you're at now and what you're exploring now?
Well, first of all, I would love to acknowledge you, Kyle, for that encouragement. And I can remember the conversation where I was like, yeah, I'm letting this go for now. I had also been offered and accepted like a pretty hefty scholarship to do my PhD when I
Mm,
finished my master's. So I was also walking away from that. But, and it's like, and most people's response was like, shouldn't you at least finish your master's,
right.
But your response was like, I love that story. So that was super encouraging, because even still right now, I'm like, is it, but yeah, who knows what's right and wrong, really? You don't know where
Yeah, for
anything,
sure.
but but it was slowly dawning, this feeling of like, what I'm working on right now is not my true self-expression somehow. I don't know, even though I love it, even though in my head I might still go back to it.
Yeah.
But um I have also been doing um like private spiritual facilitation work since 2018.
Mhm.
and also, um, you know, offering people guidance who are interested in how to integrate their psychedelic experiences. Um, but it's kind of a spiritual coaching almost, that
Sure.
people come to me for advice. Um, and so that had been growing, and I was working with a man. Um, this is just last year in 2025, who was like, had really a profound experience of liberation from long-standing childhood trauma housed in his body. There was this real somatic weight to this,
Mhm.
to these painful experiences. And in the course of our work, he experienced uh, a good measure of liberation. I don't think I could say a total liberation.
Right.
Um, the the work is ongoing, for
It's never over.
yeah, right. Um, but anyway, he attributed this kind of crossing of a threshold to the work that we had done together, and was he sort of pitched a partnership in which he would help me turn this work into my full-time vocation and self-expression.
Gotcha.
And the master's work had really become a grind. And I felt that it was time for me to commit myself to a different path and not try to do these two things at once. Also, my son had moved away. He'd moved to your country,
Yeah.
to Ohio,
Ohio.
and and there were complications arose as a consequence of um, the adults in charge of the program where I had
Okay.
sent him, who were, I would say, corrupt people.
Yeah.
Um, and so that was also a huge, like, psychological and emotional expenditure for me. So it was time for me to dial in. So in a way, like, yes, there was this, I was being called and I was being tested, and there were clear signals like, it's time for you to step into the next chapter.
Yeah.
That's how it felt.
And is that where you find yourself now then? You're kind of working out the details of this new calling, I suppose.
Yeah. Yes, exactly right. So
And
you
how's that
know, I
going?
still, it's going great. It's going great. It's
I
awesome,
love it.
man. Um, I still work part-time as an employee, um, counseling at an indigenous nonprofit in my
Okay.
area. So, this spiritual facilitation, I call it, or spiritual coaching, personal growth coaching, is not, doesn't sustain me financially totally yet.
Okay.
Um, but I feel confident that it's on its way. And regardless, I realize that this is something I will always do. It's sort of been like a side quest. It's been a bit of a hobby, but now it's so obviously like communicating that love has the power to totally transform your life. Seems like there's not something better I could try to do with my life than try to spread the word.
Yep.
Um, I started trying to make videos and post regularly on social media, which is something I resisted for a long time, being very regularly engaged on social media. But again, it's a good experience broadcasting.
Right.
Uh, uh, and yeah, and working with people and trying to like magnetize people who are a good fit for doing the kind of work, and having the kind of experiences that I know about from my own, just from my own humble journey, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, fuck. You couldn't have said it better. You know what I mean? Like, and again, that's kind of where we converge in a lot of ways. It's once you make the breakthroughs personally and you start to understand the significance of it, then it just becomes about how can you have an effect on everything and everyone around you. You know what I mean? And I think everybody has their strengths and their ways to do that. And it's just about figuring out where those strengths are and then how to be most effective. And, social media is, it serves an important purpose because it is a way to get these messages out there on a large scale. And so it's a necessary evil, I would say, in some regards, because I don't like spending a lot of time on it myself, but it's a tool like anything else, right? And if you can use it as a tool and you don't get roped into it, you don't let it take away all your attention, it can be a very useful one to get these messages out. And so, yeah, I mean,
I've had this experience too of like, it's a kind of a waking up experience, right? I don't know
yeah,
how you would describe. I'd love to hear how you characterize or describe your own kind of transformational journey or experience. But the salient thing that I'm trying to put my finger on now is that when you feel it, when you start to get it, and when you start to see the effect that it's having on your life and relationships, there's an undeniable call to share it.
right.
And I would say that that's because, well, you don't have to spend much time in the forest before and looking around before you realize that life desires more life.
Yeah,
And when life itself, or the spirit of life, that originating kind of generative spark, grabs a hold of you, or you've cleared away enough of the kind of muck you've accumulated through your life, that energy is what motivates you, then you just want to surrender to its use of you, you know.
yeah. It just takes over. I mean, it's the inspiration for everything I do now. Doing this podcast with you today is directly a result of those changes. The music that I write now is a direct result of those changes. And everything that I think about and all the people that I engage with and interact with is, a result of that exact thing. It's like, it's infectious. You know what I mean? I'm getting emotional talking about it now. Like it's hard but it's a good thing, it's not like a sadness. It's just a huge sigh of relief in a lot of ways. And the more that you cultivate it and get comfortable with it, then the more you can project it outward everywhere around you. And there's not a better feeling in the world to know that you've helped somebody else get a little bit closer to that understanding of, just finding their way back to themselves and what they truly are.
Yes, I think you've nailed it, that there's not a better feeling, meaning you grow from the sharing. You in giving, when the gift is received, it's received for you, you know. And
Yeah.
so there's this, you begin to understand how connected we are, um and how connected you are to other people, and how other people's well-being is related to your own, in some sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Really just the oneness of all of it, right? Like
Mm.
nothing is apart from you anymore. And so you start to look at everybody around you that before you might be like, I have nothing in common with that person. that person's doing it all wrong, but then you start to accept responsibility for that person's experience as your own, because really you are just a part of that same thing, right? A part of that greater whole. And so it's no longer separate. You start to remove the separateness from everything around you, and it's just, starts to be reflected in all the decisions that you make when you're not judging everything as something different than you.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Based on what we were just saying there, there's have you ever read much Dostoevsky?
No, I've never even heard the name.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah, so he's like a giant of Russian literature. He's a 19th century Russian novelist, but he's also kind of a mystic,
Okay.
um, like a Christian mystic. But he's got this great quote about responsibility. Yeah. Okay. So what you were just saying reminds me of this. Um, Dostoevsky, this is attributed to him. Every man, meaning every person, is not only responsible for what he does, but what everyone else does. That is like a super tough teaching.
Right. It's really
You're
hard to
respon-
grasp that.
you are responsible for the state of the world.
Yeah.
But I think you can see like that's if you could take that seriously, how useful that would be. Uh, like if you really said, okay, I mean, I have had this experience actually. I've had a mystical experience where I felt myself like possessed by the creator of the universe. And the first thing that came over me was this overwhelming love for this planet. I was sitting by a waterfall and I was just like, my God, I love life. I love how life grows up on this planet and is breathed in the air through my lungs and flows from this waterfall and is in the aliveness of the trees of this forest all around me. And the next thing that happened was that it occurred to me all of the cruelty and injustice and evil in the world. And that because I loved life so much, I had allowed it to proliferate of its own free will. And that the consequence was that certain beings had become corrupted and were now causing harm.
Yeah.
And I felt this deep responsibility for the state of life on this planet. And it was sad. Like I wept and I grieved, but I also had this feeling of like, okay, this is how it is. This is what reality is like right now. And I've just woken up in this body. Now what? What can I do? And that's been guiding me for some years now.
Yeah.
And I don't I'm not I don't know what I can expect in terms of an impact, but I know that I can participate in how life unfolds in the most loving way that I possibly can. And so that like feeling that responsibility for everything, I would say that's not my default. I don't normally go around thinking that, but in the odd moments that I can remind myself of it, I feel inspired.
Yeah. It feels kind of like maybe the point of all of this in some weird way. You know what I mean? Like to love so unconditionally that you apply it to literally everything that exists equally. And it's not an easy thing to do. And I'm not claiming that I have any idea what that actually feels like to do. But I think just the acknowledgement of the power of that, and then the attempt to do it the best that you possibly can, is kind of the purpose, you know, kind of what life becomes about, I think, once you step into it. And you just do the best you can with that approach, and, like, hope that more people continue to wake up to that same sentiment until it reaches a sort of, a sort of, I guess, amount of people that can have a big enough impact to turn this thing around. You know what I mean? And that becomes the
That would
norm,
that would be wonderful.
right?
But I would say it's already a blessing if I just wake up to the possibility of living a life totally devoted to love, to
Yeah,
loving myself as an expression of life itself, as an expression of consciousness itself, as an expression of love itself, as an expression of the recognition that whatever I take to be I, me, myself on a daily basis totally depends on what I take to be not I, me, myself on a daily basis.
yeah,
And to furthermore embrace that this process of growing into and towards a full expression of love is itself enough.
yeah,
And I don't know what the outcome will be. I guess, who knows how many people would ever adopt this attitude. But there's something about participating in the patterns of reality with this orientation that allows a kind of a settling, I would say, that whatever the outcome, this moment is plenty.
I think we should stop there. I I can't think of a better way to wrap this up. I mean, that is just so well spoken, and it really can't. I can't express enough how much I appreciate you taking time from your very busy life, even if it was partially impacted by unforeseen circumstances. Um, but I know how much you have going on, and I know how difficult it can be to carve out these spaces. And I think everything that you've shared today uh, will, potentially help somebody who's watching maybe take a different look at things, and maybe that turns into them taking a different approach towards how they're living their lives or how they perceive themselves in this experience. And I mean, that's what this podcast is here to do. It, at least I hope, is to just provide some words that can impact somebody along their way. And you've really helped. You've really helped in that process. So I really appreciate your time, and we'll do it again sometime. I
Yeah.
don't think this will be the last time.
Well, thank you, Kyle. I mean, this is, especially once we get through my biography part of it, this is just a lot like how you and I would talk anyway. And
It's
so
true.
that's very good. That's uplifting to me to feel connected, and you have a very uplifting way of listening to me. Is a tremendous gift. Your generosity and your spirit are a blessing to me. Thank you for having me here and the opportunity to connect with whoever might be listening. That's also a blessing. And thank you very much.
Yeah, man. Thank you for everything. And do you have anything you're working on, or
Yeah.
you want to talk about just before we close things out? And I'll drop any of this information in the show notes as well,
Yeah,
for people to
sure.
to access it. But
Yeah. So there, at this stage, what I have are social media platforms on Instagram. TikTok, and YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
You can find me at Kefa Zoe. So that's Kefa, Kefa, last name Zoe, Z, or as you Americans say, Z
Yeah.
O E, Kefa Zoe. And I just daily or roughly daily um, will talk into the camera for a few minutes and try to send out some kind of good word. And there's also a website, kefazoe.com. It's a bit under construction at this moment. I don't know, by the time people see this, maybe it'll be a little more complete, but that's where people will ultimately be able to like book sessions with me. So I'm available to people in a one-on-one capacity, online or in person if you're in Vancouver. And yeah, just trying to do the thing, just doing my best to kind of get. I mean, the whole reason I have this name Kefa Zoe is because it's kind of like Happy Kreter's got all this baggage. If I could just kind of get him to just like chill out and let that light, let that love, let that life come through,
Yeah.
then that's how things grow,
Yeah. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you,
It's
Kyle.
an honor and a privilege to share these words with you, and I look forward to seeing you in August to share many more.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for the gift.